Thank you for taking the time today to come and listen to our talk, The Stewards of the Earth, about sustainable landscapes here at the University of Pittsburgh. So just to do some introductions really quick before we get started, as well as going over the agenda of sort of items we're going to talk about today. I am Rachel Bowers. I am a planner and landscape designer here at Pitt in the Office of Planning, Design, and Construction.
And I am Andy Moran. I'm the Senior Manager of Grounds for the university.
So just a kind of a quick agenda of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to first sort of start off by talking about like what is a landscape, which may seem a little self-explanatory, but we'll get into why that's important when speaking about specifically like the landscape here at Pitt. Then we'll go into discussing, a portion of the Pitt sustainability plan. After that, we'll sort of get into the meat of the presentation, where I will speak about the projects that we are working on here in PD&C. And then Andy will talk about the facilities and maintenance portion of campus with regards to grounds work. And then we're going to finish up the presentation talking about sort of campus designations and accreditations of how that pertains to the landscape, and then also campus committees. And then we will end the presentation with time for questions. So Andy and I kindly ask that you hold off on asking any questions until that time period. It should be about 10 minutes at the end. If you need to write anything down, if you're afraid that a question might just leave your brain, I know it happens, it's a Friday, we can ask you to put it in the chat and we'll check that area first with questions. So I think starting off, we wanted to speak about like what is a campus. And it's interesting when you look at the word origin of campus, it is a noun from Latin that means flat land or field. It is further interesting in the fact that campuses, or the original campuses, originated outside, where instruction happened underneath a tree, as you can see in this mosaic, these lovely gentlemen in their togas. And also the fact that even today, there is still instruction that happens outside in landscaped and particularly tree and wooded landscapes. The importance of landscapes in a university setting, I think, to me and Andy, is that they are one of the primary sort of organizing elements, both whether or not they're the natural elements, such as topography, which plays a big part in the campus here at Pitt, or even if they're man-made, and also in the case of our landscape and campus here at Pitt, in the sense that we are in a very dense urbanized area. Landscapes also act as sort of the civic spaces of campus. Again, because Pitt is integrated into the city fabric, our exterior areas and sites and landscapes here not only are for the use of our own campus community, but also for the Oakland community and for the city of Pittsburgh itself. And I think when speaking about campuses, ultimately, landscape is a very powerful reflection of an institution's identity and ultimately like what it values. And so one of the values that Pitt has is that of sustainability and a commitment to sustainability. Pitt has a sustainability plan. It was published in 2018, and it identified 15 impact areas that help set goals for the university moving forward. Another portion of those goals was also to have key performance indicators, which are tracked and reported over time. Of these 15 impact areas, they were organized into 3 separate themes: that of stewardship, which is the area in the diagram on the right-hand side of the page that's in green; exploration, which is the area that's in purple; and finally, community and culture, which is the area in blue. So today we will specifically be talking about the landscape and ecology area under the umbrella of stewardship. And if you're wondering, yes, did we sort of take that for the title of the presentation? We did. So I think sort of before we get into that, we wanted to sort of discuss the goals and aspirations of that portion of the plan, and then also what those key performance indicators are for that portion of the plan, because both the goals and the indicators will play into the projects that I will be speaking about and the work that Andy does here on campus every day. So just really quickly, as you can see on the screen, the first goal was to adhere to Pitt's sustainable landscape design guidelines for all new landscapes, to increase tree canopy by 50% and replace 15% of lawn area with indigenous species. And then the final goal was to maintain at least 70% of landscape areas in accordance with the Northeast Organic Farming Association, or NOFA's standard for organic lawn care. And the key performance indicators for this portion of the plan have to do with LEED sustainability site points, which we'll talk about in a minute when I get into the sort of project-related section of this presentation. Percentage of lawn care area that's maintained through NOFA standards, which Angie will talk about a bit later. And then sort of the more general categories of increasing the number of tree plantings, increasing the tree canopy percentage, and then also reducing the percent lawn on campus. So for the planning and design portion of this presentation, I'm going to be talking about two specific projects. The first set of projects I'm going to be talking about is the hillside area of campus, where there is a lot of construction work happening currently. It is what I'll be talking about is sort of what in the planning world we sort of refer to as like the soup to nuts sort of approach, where I'll be talking about elements that are both planning related, both design related, and then ultimately construction related. And then I'll be talking about a master planning exercise that we are doing down in Lower Campus at the lawn and landscape areas surrounding the Cathedral of Learning. So for the hillside projects, don't know if people on the chat of how long you have been at the university. Again, there's a lot of construction happening currently at this area of campus. So wanted to give just a bit of a background of what the hillside was like before the university started doing work there. That area of campus was categorized heavily by steep sloped conditions, which were a combination of both planted areas and grass. Many of those planted areas were sort of weedy species, as well as having a lot of invasive species. There were few sort of native species there. There were areas where the hillsides were beginning to erode. And also it was a place that didn't have a lot of human engagement. There was the lawn area that was in what we refer to as the bowl to the east of the Peterson Event Center, that was used by students and used for events. But outside of that area, it was a very steep condition where there was pathways and stairs that many people used as a pass through between sort of the upper, middle, and then lower portions of campus. So in 2019, the planning office contracted a landscape architect to develop a framework plan for the hillside. And it looked at this area of campus as a district. In addition to some of the site-related items in this area of campus, there was also a need for an increase in student services, which we'll talk about when we get to the projects in a slide here. And so it was really looking of how new student services, mainly in the way of new buildings that would provide amenities, could be greater integrated into the landscape and ultimately develop a greater sense of place. So the plan objectives were to, increase the quality of vegetation through native plantings in this area, to look to reforest hillsides, to provide more slope stabilization, also to improve infrastructure in this area, as well as to provide accessible pathways and to have a greater enhancement of the campus fabric as it moves from the different areas of campus, from upper to middle to then to lower campus. So this is an overall plan of that area. While we usually categorize the hillside as sort of everything that is shown here on the map, the area that we're specifically going to be concentrating on today is the space that is sort of sandwiched, you could say, between O'Hara Street in the south and then Aliquippa in the north. On the eastern side, is Parkman Ave and getting into the Shenley Farms neighborhood. And then on the western side of the street is the Peterson Event Center, in addition to the other athletic facilities and Salk Hall. So I'm just going to quickly sort of go through the projects that are there. I think the one that maybe people may know about the most is what is circled here and identified as A, which is the new Recreation and Wellness Center. The second project, B, is the Arena and Sports Performance Center. Project C is Hillside Housing, which is a student dormitory. And then the area in the center of all of this, we sort of refer to as the Hillside Quad. It is a open landscape, a very steep one, that is in between all three of these buildings, as well as the existing dormitories that are in that portion of campus. So I think when looking at the projects themselves, these are all images of the projects. Just to go through them really quickly, A is the Rec and Wellness Center, which if you've been up on O'Hara, it's very exciting because it's starting to look quite like this image here. It will be a centralized recreation facility that can be used not just by students, but also by faculty and staff. B, this is the Arena and Sports Performance Center. The Sports Performance Center is in the back, where there'll be exercise and training facilities and locker rooms and offices for athletics. And then the arena is the part of the project here along the front of the building, which also has this very lovely green roof on the top of it. Hillside Housing is here at C. I believe it's a 10 to 15 foot stories of a student dormitory, which will also have kind of common spaces on the ground level and will have parking on the lower floors. And then D is actually the project this project is currently under design at the moment. So it doesn't look exactly as this picture entails, but this is the quad space, which is a different take on a quad, but still a quad space that is in between all of the buildings, where there'll be a series of steps and accessible paths at both the bottom and the top, with different areas throughout where people can congregate. There's some amazing views that will be there as well, specifically in the upper portion and in the middle portion where you're above the trees, that will allow you actually to see out over this space and all the way to lower campus. And there's an amazing view of the cathedral from that area of campus. So some of the kind of, I think, organizing elements that run through all four of these projects are obviously an assessment of topography. And all of these buildings in the site themselves are trying to find a way to, maneuver and address the topography in these spaces. The buildings do themselves take up a lot of the topography, but from a site-related standpoint and from a landscape-related standpoint, vegetation, which we'll talk about in a bit, plays a big part in that, as well as the amount of pathways and stairs that you need to traverse this space. There's really no way to get around and through the space without using stairs. I think our hope with this is that we have created enough, plaza spaces and terrace spaces and areas of respite that it becomes an interesting and engaging walk, and also a place where you can stop and rest along the way. I think another element of all of these sites is that in order to do this construction work and to build these facilities and to build the landscapes that we're speaking about, we had to disrupt a lot of land. So in order to do that, we will also talk about this in a slide or two, is that the university has undertook sort of the reforestation also of this area to restore and better the habitat that was previously there. All of the areas around these sites have very little grass space too. The only area of lawn is actually at the top of the arena. I know that some of these images look as if they're grass, but they will actually be a series of like meadow mixes on the slopes, as well as shrubs, understory trees, and then larger shade trees as well. I think some of the other items that are not specifically landscape based, but they do come into play outside of giving more people on campus open spaces in which they can engage with nature and also engage with each other. There are elements that also look at stormwater management. Plantings allow for more infiltration of water and greater replenishing of aquifers than lawn area does, and specifically even more than pavement. We've also looked at using materials that have a low reflectivity to reduce like urban heat island effect. And also we're looking at across these sites using dark sky lighting to cut down on light pollution as well. I did, just before we move on, wanted to talk a bit about the planting scheme for these sites. So all of the plantings in these areas, we use almost entirely native plantings. I think there's maybe one plant, Andy, around the rec center and the staircase that we refer to as Panther Run. There's one species which is maybe not native, and then the turf grass is also on the green roof, not a native species. But everything outside of that is a native plant. It is in line with the university's sustainable landscape guidelines. These were developed and adopted in 2017, and they, provide guidance on soil and plant selection. They outline preferred species that we want to use on campus, what species we would like to avoid, and then also what species are in fact prohibited. So they were used as the basis for the development of the planting schemes for these projects. And they're also part of the university's design guidelines. So they are given to all contractors and consultants that work with us so they can be followed. So yeah, I think from there, as I had mentioned earlier in the talk, though there was a lot of disturbance on these hillsides to build the projects that I spoke about, the university did look to and is continuing to look to ways to reforest these hillside areas. I think also, as I had stated, many of these areas were previously had vegetation on them that were non-native or were invasive. And actually the city has a requirement that when there are trees removed on property that are over 12 inches in caliper, you have to do an immediate inch-to-inch replacement for those trees. And if you don't do that, then there's actually a fund that you have to pay into, so those trees can be replaced elsewhere within the city. So the university, instead, with the help of an ecologist, a man by the name of Tim Nuttall, he, in conjunction with us, actually developed a proposal that was ultimately accepted by the city, that instead of doing an inch-to-inch replacement for trees, we instead developed a system that provided a credit for caliper inches that were an equivalent and went towards a more ecologically sustainable reforestation of these areas. So the reforestation areas that I'm speaking about can be seen in the map on the screen. Currently, there's 5 separate areas. Most of the zones are concentrated in the space that we've been speaking about between O'Hara and Aliquippa. They're in the eastern portion of the site. Many of these areas were smaller areas that came about as the hillside work progressed. There are also areas where the slope is almost too steep to do anything with them, either via a building or having them be a space that we would want people to be in. So the intent of these reforestation areas was to, and through the system that was developed, was to have real, true sort of ecological succession. So when we started on site and was prepping the land for all of the structures and the buildings that we ended up putting there, you know, we had the exposed rock and sort of the grasses, and that was sort of the initial condition of that space. Sort of since then, we've moved into you know, the area that is outlined in red, where we have sort of the beginnings of a forest, in the sense that we have herbaceous ground cover, we have shrubs, and then we have young trees. So the point of this, the sort of the secondary, not only to get you know, kind of true ecological succession, the starting of like a forest, was also for there to be erosion control and slope protection in these areas as well, in addition to, again, using native plantings. And the zones themselves encompass about 2.5 acres. As of sort of the last count that we had, there's about 740 plus trees and shrubs that are planted in all of the zones, and about 300 additional trees and shrubs which are associated with the 4 projects that we've been speaking about in that sort of proper. The other portion of the reforestation is we do have monitoring for these areas. They happen sort of bi-yearly, and they are reported back to, you know, our office in planning, and they are assessing health and as well as invasive species control. So now quickly, I want to talk about the Cathedral of Learning Landscape vision plan. I think everybody knows sort of where the Cathedral of Learning is in the heart of our campus. This plan, which was started back in sort of like late winter, spring of this year, is looking at the whole 14-acre sort of district that encompasses both the cathedral, the Stephen Foster Memorial, and Hines Chapel. Because of the importance of you know, this space to the university, and because of the sort of iconic nature of the building and the land around it, planning wanted to look at developing a plan for this portion of campus, which would address, you know, sort of the overall landscape character of the space, as well as pathway connectivity and accessibility, the event spaces in the space, the recreational activities that happen there, as well as sort of the maintenance, amenities, and the utilities, many of which are what help to support many of the events and recreation activities that occur there. So where we are sort of in this project, this is an ongoing project, which we're hoping to have wrapped up by the end of this year of 2024. In the spring, we did pretty robust stakeholder engagement. We did tabling sessions in April with the students, where we had almost 120 of them, excuse me, stop by the 2 locations that we had, one in the cathedral and the other at Hillman Library. We've also had meetings with persons within our operations offices across campus, as well as our academic departments. And we also had a survey as well where we had over 2,500 responses of student, faculty, and staff, which we were really not expecting, but we're very happy to have that feedback. So if anybody on the call today saw that survey and took that survey, I thank you for your input. So this project is we're moving into a sort of the concept phase of this design. So what is on the screen right now is sort of the 4 kind of study areas that the landscape architect that planning has contracted with are looking at. So the areas of edges and access, of connectivity and mobility, of programming and identity, of how the spaces can better be used. And then I think probably one of the most important areas of it is arboreal curation and how we can look to protect, preserve, and plan for the canopy cover that we have in that area of campus. So I think with that, I will turn it over to Andy.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, so I'm going to talk about maintenance of the landscapes. So my main job on campus is to maintain what Rachel's group has planned and keep the campus looking beautiful. So a couple things we're going to go over are the plant selection and how we go about selecting plants for the campus. So the first thing we would look at is the site. Is it a shady site? Is it a sunny site? Is there a source of water nearby? That's very important. The campus is very tight, and be dragging hoses all around or driving a water tank around sometimes makes that hard. So we want to make sure that there's a water source nearby. We also look at how we're going to maintain the plants. Are they near a busy sidewalk? So as these shrubs grow, is pruning and shearing of the shrubs going to be an issue? As everybody really knows on campus during class changes, lots of people on the sidewalks. So we don't want to really be working a lot in the sidewalk. So we'll pick plants that are near busy sidewalks that don't grow as much or don't need a regular pruning. Another thing we also have to consider when we select plants for the general campus is winter maintenance. We have over 32 miles of sidewalks, over 2,000 steps, and every year we're adding more to each of those. So, winter maintenance is a big consideration for plants. So areas where we need to put salt on the sidewalks to provide a safe walking surface, we want to make sure that we're selecting plants that can tolerate that salt that does go on the sidewalks. So after that is all considered, we look at the main objective for the planting. Is it for a ground cover? Is it for show? What I mean by that is it for flowers? We have 2 times on campus mainly that we want to have the campus looking showy. That's going to be graduation and for when students come back for arrival. So that's our main objectives. If it's around dorms, we want to have the plants being their best during arrival. If it's around the Peterson Event Center or a lower campus, maybe graduation. So we'll consider what time of the year we want the flowers to be at their best. Because as you know, not all flowers flower throughout the year. So we can kind of pick and choose when we want to have them be their showiest. Another thing, do we want it to attract pollinators? So we'll look at that type of plant for selections. And then lastly, we want to consider the mature size of the plant. Is it going to outgrow its location? So we don't want to put something in that in 10, 15 years, it's going to have to be cut down, or it's constantly being pruned. Because, a lot of times native shrubs don't like that pruning. They don't look good, and they just want to grow in their natural habitat. So we consider the mature growth of the plant. And I didn't mention, but it's kind of it's always native plants first. So whenever we're designing a landscape or replacing plants, we ask ourselves, can we put native plants in here? 99% of the times we do native plants. Every once in a while we can't do natives, and there's various reasons for that. But when we do select non-native plants, we really do our research on them, make sure they're not invasive, not sure they're going to spread, things like that. So, but for the most part, it's always native plants, trees, shrubs, and perennials going in. Okay, so the tree plantings and tree inventory. Oh, sorry. You know what? I forgot two things. The new construction. So what I just talked about was adding plants to existing construction or existing areas. But for new constructions, we work with the landscape architects that are hired by the university. So Rachel and I will review their plans and put our input in. So my input is going to be mainly for the maintenance of those plants. So I want to make sure that, again, plants are going to get too big, plants are going to survive. We've planted plants over the 10 years that I've been here that we have found out just don't do well. So the landscape architects really don't know that. So we're able to substitute those plants with other things. So the Bioforge building is located off campus. It's in the Hazelwood neighborhood section. It's along the river down 2nd Avenue. And it's going to be a unique kind of a landscape because it won't have any lawn associated with it. So it's going to be completely landscaped with perennials, trees, and shrubs, which are all native. And most of the plants are pollinator friendly, and they're going to attract a wide variety of species of pollinators. So that's going to be coming online next year. Like I said, it's a totally different landscape than we have a lot on campus here. Most of our buildings have lawn around them or a lot of concrete. This building is a newer construction, and there's a plan for that whole complex down there. So the other building is the Hillman Library renovation, and that is in the heart of the campus. And the renovated library is going to attract more students and staff than it ever has before. So there's planning for a lot of outdoor seating, and it's going to encourage people to come and gather, come and sit outdoors with colleagues, with their friends. So with that being said, choosing plants for that is a little bit differently because of the amount of people that are going to be nearby. And the one thing that we look at is, are the plants going to attract bees? A lot of the landscaping is right up against, say, the back of a bench or near tables. So we don't want to encourage the bees and have somebody that's highly allergic to get stung. So that landscaping there, now that's not eliminating all the pollinators, it's just mainly the bees. And but don't worry, because we are planting a lot of other bee friendly plants around campus. So but each situation and each new construction and then each existing construction has its unique properties. There's not one size fits all. So when I'm going out, I'll spend many hours just kind of taking pictures, looking at different angles. And sometimes we'll plant things and we have to remove them, then move them a little bit, shift them around. But we have a great crew here that takes care of all that. So again, just to kind of review, each site is site specific, and we do not have a cookie cutter landscape for the whole campus. All right, so moving on to tree plantings. That's one of the first things you notice when you're coming through Oakland. Lack of trees on a lot of the streets and neighborhoods, and then all of a sudden you come into the Union, you come into the Cathedral area, and there's mature trees, there's lots of trees. So over the past few years, we've worked with arborists to identify every tree on Oakland campus, and we have nearly 5,000 trees just on the Oakland campus. And each year the grounds department plants dozens to many dozens of trees to add to our goal of increasing the tree canopy. And then these new trees are inputted into the current database so that we continually have an up-to-date record. Now, currently, we do not have it available to the public, but that's something that has been talked about. But we do have all of our trees tracked by a GIS program. And maybe in the future, the public will be able to sign on and look at the trees that we have. So sourcing of trees, anytime we're planting trees, we always want to have the best quality of tree that's possible. Just the nature of our property, there's several things going against a new tree. We have urban pollution, we have compaction, we have students. So lots of things that the tree has to fight off, the tree has to overcome. It's not as good. It's not a perfect world here, definitely in the Oakland area. So so small trees and saplings we source from Tree Pittsburgh, located in Lawrenceville, and those would be mainly for areas that we reforest. They're going to be trees that are about the thickness of a pencil, which we call whips, up to maybe an inch caliper. So we'll try with Tree Pittsburgh first. They grow all native trees, and they're a great source. We've worked with them before. Our contractors work with them, so we'll source trees from them for the smaller trees. For the larger caliber trees, we've developed a great relationship with a company called Tremendous. It's a locally owned, it's a woman-owned company. And I've worked with her for the 10 years that I've been at Pitt, and I've also worked with her for 6 years at my other position. And she knows how particular I am about the trees. She won't pick out a tree that is not going to be to our liking. So that saves me from time to having to go out to a tree farm and pick out our trees. She knows exactly what we want. She goes out, she tags them, she delivers them, things like that. So that's where we get a lot of our that's where we get 99% of our trees from. Then I also recommend her to contractors that are doing work on the campus to use her. Okay. All right, so campus student groups and organizations. I'm going to give you some information about those. So each year I work with the student groups that have projects in mind that they would like to have their group start and complete. So I'll let them design it. They'll show me the design, I'll critique it, add my input to it, and then they work on getting cost estimates, and if needed, they also work on getting funding. So there's several different funding sources that on campus that they'll go through. So after all that is done, then they get to do the fun part, and that's getting their hands dirty, getting to be able to plant the plants that they designed. So now the one current group, which is newly formed, is the Conservation Club at Pitt, and that's an ongoing club. So that they're going to be they just started about 2 years ago, and they have lots of projects in mind that each year the new students that are in that group, they'll tackle that project. And so, like I said, I'll work with them to do that. And in the picture is one of their projects up on Vera Street. Another is Plant the Plate. Again, that's a campus group, and they operate the Oakland Avenue Garden, and we work with them also to get whatever supplies they need to help them out down there. The other type of students that I work with are an environmental studies program through Professor Ward and their sustainability class. So same kind of thing. I work with the group I meet with them. I see what their ideas are. I let them design it. I give them input. They get their funding, and then they get their friends and volunteers to plant. Now the big difference with that is they get graded on it. The clubs and the student groups, organizations, they don't have grading. They have a time frame, but it's not a semester. So the sustainability classes, not only do they learn a lot about planting and plants, but they also learn about time management. Sometimes I have to get approvals, and things just sometimes don't work out in a semester period. So they have these big aspirations and big goals, but then sometimes it has to be brought back down to reality that you can only do so much in a semester period so that you can get graded on it. And to date, I do not have a group that has failed. environmental studies program. So that's good. All right, Rachel, next slide. All right, as Rachel talked about earlier, the NOFA certification, and that's again the Northeast Organic Farming Association. And what that basically is they have set guidelines to fostering a sustainable landscaping or to a sustainable landscape. And so just this year, we achieved one of the Pitt Sustainability Plan's goal, which was to maintain at least 75% of our landscape areas in accordance to NOFA standards. And a lot of that has just come over the last, again, 10 years that I've been here, training the employees to change their ways, more sustainable, more organic, those kind of things. So that's, we're on the right track. We reached that goal as planned. One of the biggest sustainable things on campus that we do, and you've probably noticed, is the battery powered equipment. So about a year or two after I started here, we started converting over our small gas powered equipment. And throughout that 8 years or so, we have retired about 100 small gas engine pieces of equipment and transitioned those into battery powered. So not only are we reducing our carbon footprint, but what people really noticed and kind of was a byproduct of it was how much quieter the grounds department is. You don't go outside and hear that whining of the blowers and the whining of the weed eaters. We've all transitioned 99%. We have one place that doesn't have power, but we're getting power to it this year. So they still have some gas powered equipment, but 99% of our small handheld daily used equipment is battery powered now. All right, so kind of explaining to you about our crew and how we train for sustainability. So we have 34 employees, and we average about 20 hours of documented training per employee per year. So that comes out to over 600 paid hours of training just for the grounds department. Myself and my 2 assistants conduct the majority of the training, but we also outsource the training to professionals. Some of the training we provide deals with employee safety, but also includes machine operation, horticultural practices, and human resource topics. So along with the training is also just education. Not many years ago, many of the groundskeepers didn't even know what sustainability was. So over the years, myself and my assistants have passed along our knowledge just through casual conversation out in the field or in training and education classes. So again, I feel that we have some people that have worked here for 30 years, and we have some people that have been here for less than a year. So we're always getting new employees, and we're always trying to get them focused on the university goals, which include a lot of sustainable items. All right, I think that's it for me, Rachel. Oh, you're muted still.
Thank you. All right, great. So I know we only have about 15 minutes left, and we wanted to have time for questions. I see that there's a couple currently in the chat. So I think before we wrap up, Andy and I wanted to just touch briefly again on some of the campus designations that we have here, as well as some of the campus committees that deal with landscape related items and sustainable related initiatives here on campus. So one of the first ones is the B Campus USA. We gained this accreditation in 2020, and this accreditation brings awareness to the importance of pollinators when it comes to ecosystem health, while also encouraging the protection and preservation of pollinator habitat. So the byproduct of this is that the campus continues to commit to the establishment of native habitats, providing nesting sites for pollinators, reducing pesticide use, and continuing the education of pollinators, their habitat, and the conservation of it, which this talk today is about, and the other talks and activities that are happening for Pollinator Month as well. So tree campuses.
So Tree Campus USA is similar to the Bee Campus USA, where we're a certified tree campus campus, and we gained that accreditation in 2021. And this organization promotes the sustainable campus forestry, encourages tree growth, encourages activities around trees. So, and it honors universities and their leaders for promoting healthy trees and engaging students and employees in the spirit of conservation.
So I think one of the other designations that we don't have yet, but that we're working towards is an Arboretum designation. And this is specifically with the plan that I spoke about earlier for the Cathedral of Learning lawn and landscape area. So this is, as I said, one item that we're looking of having that portion of campus be designated as an Arboretum. This designation has 4 different levels, which each has its own criteria. We would be starting off looking at a level 1 sort of designation, which looks at things such as, the variety of species that you have on campus or in a specific area, whether or not they're, signed. So there's an educational component to it as well. And there are over 700 globally accredited arboretums. And there are several universities within the Pittsburgh area that have this designation, including CMU and Chapel. And then so finally, the committees that we have on campus is we have a pollinator committee. They are a subcommittee for the Chancellor's Advisory Council on sustainability. They are the committee that is responsible for the reapplication every year of the Bee Campus USA designation. One requirement of that application is continuing education, which again is what this talk is working towards, as well as the other events that you can partake in the rest of this month for Pollinator Month. And in addition to that, they also advise on plant selection and landscape practices across campus.
And finally, the Campus Tree Advisory Committee. It's a subcommittee of the Chancellor's Advisory Committee on Sustainability. And the purpose of the committee is to responsible for the Tree Campus Higher Education Certification, which is through the Tree Campus organization, and the requirements to maintain that. So that's having a planned event each year, documenting the maintenance of the trees, documenting the new trees that are planted, anything kind of do with the trees. That is what the Campus Tree Committee takes care of.
So I think our final slide. Oh, I've gone too far. Oh, I'm not too eager to be done. I know we have like 10 more minutes left. Don't take that as a sign. So yeah, so thank you so much for coming and listening to Andy and I speak about the sustainable landscape practices that we have on campus, how that also affects the projects that we are planning and designing and construction on campus. And both he and I look forward to continuing our work in our respective offices and increasing the landscapes and built landscapes of Pitt. So I see that there are 2 questions in the chat. Let me see here. I think there is a question from Linda that says, I'm just going to read this out really quickly, if that's okay, unless you want to restate it.
No, you can read it.
Okay. It says, is there any pressure from the university administration to monetize this? For example, seeking donations in order to name individual trees in honor of someone? Yes, we do. We have had requests. I think both I have in my time in planning and Andy has as well, of people wanting to plant memorial trees on campus. I believe many of them, Andy, are located, lots of people want them planted on the cathedral lawn. I think that's where several of them are. So those requests do come through. They're not terribly frequent. I don't think that that's out of line to say. But they do come up. I don't think, I would have to check with persons in like the PAE. I don't know if they have a program that sort of promotes the planting of a memorial tree on campus. But it does come up. I don't know if anything, Andy, to
Yeah,
add.
the last tree, the memorial tree that we planted was probably 3 years ago. So it's not very frequent. And a lot of times too, people would request them to in areas that really can't be planted as a memorial or for a memorial. So it's not very frequent. And I'm not sure if the new master plan has kind of put a hold on that. But yeah, Linda, it's not something that's frequent, but it has happened. You will see some trees around campus that do have memorial plaques, but it's not definitely not an everyday thing.
I know Gregory had a comment, I think, about the arena and sports performance center. And yes, it's a bit of a wild facility. So yeah, I see Gregory has his hand up. And then after him, Henry. So we'll go with Gregory first.
Rachel and Andy, thank you so much for taking the opportunity to walk through all this. This is really interesting, and I appreciate the work of all your coworkers as well. I guess my question deals with planning a garden with bee allergies in mind. What are some of the things, or maybe you don't know or whatever, like that should be considered, or standards or best practices when you're thinking about a planting that's pollinator friendly, but maybe is safer for those with allergies?
So I'll take this one, Rachel. So again, that kind of depends on where it's going to be. So we have considered that in many locations. And as I mentioned, like the Hillman Library, we are making sure that we don't have plants that are designated as bee attractants to putting them in the landscape. If it's an open area where somebody walking can scoot around the landscape, we're not going to be able to prevent bees from obviously being on campus, but we don't want to squeeze people into an area and have lots of bees flying around them. So in areas that are open, maybe near Pazvar or even around the cathedral, people can spread out. If they see bees and they're very allergic to bees, I'm sure they're always looking for it. They can kind of go around an area. So we do consider that when we do plantings in tight areas or where benches are, or especially where people are eating. If there's an outdoor dining area, we're not going to be putting in there plants that again attract the bees. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you.
I think Henry had his hand up. And then we have another question in the chat, but Henry can go first. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, thank you both again for spending the time to talk to us about the campus and your project you're working on. This has been really, really interesting. I had a question about the natural areas that Ms. Rachel, you were talking about that aren't really lawn spaces for people to hang out on, but they're more, the goal is to get like an ecological succession. What are once it's all planted and like the construction is complete, what do you think are the largest barriers to achieving like a natural ecological succession occurring there? And what are you hoping to do to maintain the those areas?
Well, I mean, I think it's sort of a twofold. you know, one of the issues that that we have seen in those areas is the presence of invasive species coming back. You know, there was a lot of, work that was done in the area to get rid of invasive species so that we can, begin to establish, like a ground cover treatment that is free of those, types of species. So I think that there's kind of like a more kind of diligent and sort of more constant kind of monitoring and assessment of those areas to make sure that like that portion really begins to establish well. I know that the monitoring that we do up there and the reports that we get, I think I had said bi-yearly, help with that. I mean, Andy's crews are also a big help there up in that area, and he sees things and they see things and they're able to kind of address sort of those issues kind of as they come up. And I think another element that's really important too is like getting trees established in those areas. I think, as I said, like we've planted some kind of 740 trees across all of those zones. I mean, usually when you plant trees, and Andy can speak to this, there's always some percentage of loss. So, replacing trees that have unfortunately not survived, but also, I think making sure too that we're, that we're trying to provide the best, the best habitat, for trees. In some of the early reforestation work that we did, we used some of the smaller trees that Andy had talked about, like whips and saplings. That was not as effective. So we actually moved up in size to a larger sort of 1-inch caliber trees. And since doing that, we've seen sort of more success of a little bit more mature tree, sort of taking to those areas, more quickly and establishing more quickly, so that like less loss is occurring. So I do think with sort of those reforestation areas, it's the kind of the start of it is always a little bit of it can be a little bit rocky, but I think both Andy and I have faith that that those areas will be reestablished, and as we had talked about in the presentation, that it's a better and more ecologically sustainable alternative than what we had previously. So hope that answered the question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, looks like we got time for one more quick question here. Karen had sent a chat in about maintaining student projects that were created in the past but have not been kept after students graduate. So yeah, whenever students give me a project idea, that's one of the things I ask is who's going to maintain it. And most of the time they say they're going to maintain it, their friends are going to maintain it. And, as the students graduate, it slowly falls into not getting maintained as well. And then, so yes, the grounds department does have to step in to do the maintenance on that. Now with the conservation club at Pitt, I'm going to be working with them also to look at possibly maintaining student gardens from students, from where students have left. But that is the one big challenge that sometimes students don't think, so who's going to maintain this after they leave. So, but all right, looks like we have reached our 1 o'clock. So
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. So yeah, so thank all of you for coming and for listening to our talk. We really appreciate your time, and I hope that this has been interesting and informative to all of you. So I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.
thanks, everybody. Take care.